And welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us on a Tuesday evening. NBA trade deadline is just a couple of days away, and trades are starting to pick up. We saw a couple of small deals today. We saw the big Kyrie Irving trade finally get completed yesterday, and there's a lot of talk right now on the trade market about a number of different possibilities. Let's get right into them. First and foremost, we still have some fallout from Kyrie Irving trade still happening right now. What's going to happen next with the Brooklyn Nets as they try to build around Kevin Durant, Spencer Dinwiddie, and the other pieces that they currently have? They are still looking for some more shooting here at the deadline. They already filled their hole at wing as far as a defensive stopper there with Dorian Finney-Smith. They are also looking for a backup center. They have been most recently connected with Naz Reid of the Minnesota Timberwolves anyway. They did make a trade though. Kessler Edwards goes to the Sacramento Kings along with cash. Saves them a whole bunch of money anyway as far as taxes are concerned and everything. So good deal for the Nets as they continue to try to shed a little bit of salary. Gives them a little bit more flexibility as they try to make some other moves to improve the roster before the trade deadline on February 9th. Just one programming note, we will be live for you guys today and tomorrow anyway. We'll start at 9 o'clock tonight, just like we just did. But tomorrow night, we're going to start a little bit earlier for you guys. We're going to start, instead of starting at 9 o'clock, we're going to probably start around 7 o'clock. So make sure you tune in. We'll be live all the way through probably about midnight, breaking down all the trades that happen tomorrow night on the eve of the trade deadline. Make sure you join us then. We will also be covering the Mavericks game, which will be the debut of Kyrie Irving in a Maverick uniform as he battles with the Mavericks against the LA Clippers in LA. So kind of keep your, go ahead and set your reminders, join us and, enjoy the game with us. Maybe we'll see some trades while we watch. We'll get to see how he meshes with his new teammates. Of course, Luka will not be playing, so Kyrie will be the focal point of the game, I imagine, for both the Clippers and the Mavericks alike. How exactly does he work with his new teammates, etc.? Mavericks got a really good contribution from a couple of players they're expecting to count on now that they've made the trade for Kyrie Irving. One being Josh Green, who scored 29 points against the Utah Jazz. The other being Jalen Hardy. Also also scored 29 points against the Utah Jazz when the Dallas Mavericks were extremely shorthanded against them. Christian Wood did come back the other night as well, scored 6 points in his first game back, missed 8 games due to a fractured thumb. He is one name here at the deadline for the Dallas Mavericks. Again, fallout from the Kyrie Irving trade is that one piece they could move here at the deadline as well. They're looking to move guys like JaVale McGee. We'll have a video coming out about that later on tomorrow morning. I'm probably going to have that one coming out around 8 o'clock or so. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at UpsideSN. That way you guys do get the notification whenever we do post a video, whenever we do go live. We're going to try to post little short snippets of video for you guys to keep you guys updated. We've tried doing the short format before. We're going to use that format just a little bit differently here at the trade deadline. Instead of having a full minute to kind of break down what happened in the trade, we're going to try to give you a short 15-second thing and then still have our live going on during the day tomorrow evening and then, of course, on trade deadline day. So make sure you join us for that. If you're working tomorrow or if you're working tomorrow evening and working during the trade deadline, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We'll keep you guys updated as much as possible about what's happening with your favorite team. Now, as I mentioned, the Dallas Mavericks are still active here at the deadline. They're expected to try to make a couple of different moves here at the deadline. One could include Christian Wood. If they don't get the extension done, I'd imagine the Mavericks would like to salvage some of that asset back. They did give up a first-round pick and gave up Luka Doncic's best friend on the team in Boban to be able to get the trade done. So if they're not able to negotiate that extension, they could wait until the offseason to get it done. But I think Dallas doesn't want to risk losing him to free agency. They're already going to have one big problem with that with Kyrie Irving. There was news possibly about him as well seeking a 3-year deal after the season anyway. Things seem to be working very amicably so far with the Dallas Mavericks and Kyrie Irving. So maybe, just maybe, this will work out for the Mavericks in the long run. But I imagine they don't necessarily want to have two guys going to the market that they're so reliant upon going into free agency. They did that last year with Jalen Brunson, hoped that they would be able to bring him back. But before they even got to negotiate with him, or before the New York Knicks had even gotten to negotiate with him in earnest, or in person, or even been able to negotiate with him at all, he had already seemed to basically agree to terms with the New York Knicks without even having the ability to talk. So that's the reason why the New York Knicks were penalized, of course, lost a second-round draft pick. But Jalen Brunson, it seemed like he was going to go to New York the entire time because of the connections with family. But the Dallas Mavericks cannot afford to lose another important piece like Jalen Brunson in the form of Kyrie Irving or Christian Wood. So I think Dallas is going to try to figure out a way to salvage something out of the deadline here for Christian Wood. Now, of course, they could try to go into free agency this year by trimming as much long-term money as they can, by trading JaVale McGee, by trading Tim Hardaway Jr., by trading Davis Bertans, any one of these number of pieces, and then try to go into free agency and get one of the better point guards out there. Kyrie Irving, D'Angelo Russell, Fred VanVleet, among a number of other players. Jeremy Grant is another player that's going to be a free agent that could be an impact player on the free agent market after the season. But for Dallas to go into free agency with both Kyrie and Christian Wood, I don't think that's a tenable situation for Nico Harrison or the Dallas Mavericks. So I think if they don't get the extension done, 2 years, $36 million is what Dallas has on the table right now for Christian Wood. Wood, of course, wants that 4-year deal. He's played like he's worth it so far, but maybe Dallas sees a different future now with Kyrie Irving in tow. Maybe they're looking for a third star and less focused on having a more well-rounded roster like they have had in the last few years. But I think they're going to try to consolidate their talent into a few pieces and then try to build around that. That, I think, is ultimately the goal for the Dallas Mavericks here at the trade deadline, so keep your eyes open for what could happen. JaVale McGee is going to be a hot name around the trade deadline for the next couple of days. There's a couple other centers here at the trade deadline that are expected to be moved as well. Mason Plumlee is another guy that's on the market, similar type of value. A guy like Richaun Holmes for the Sacramento Kings, another similar type value. But both of those guys have higher AAVs, at least for this year, higher cap hits. JaVale McGee only has like a $5.7 million cap hit, but he's also got a contract still, or through not just this year, but 2 more years after that. That's where I think Dallas could run into the issue of possibly trading him. He's not going to command a big return at all. I think for a team that's looking for something low cost to give them something, some defensive presence there at the 5 position, that could be a fit. For instance, say the 76ers lose out on Jared Vanderbilt, they may circle back to the Dallas Mavericks and say, hey, we've got Korkmaz who's demanding a trade, maybe something could work there, give Luka some more three-point shooting on his team, and allow the 76ers to trim a little bit of salary off of this year's team, while Dallas gets to save some long-term salary in JaVale McGee's contract. That could be something that we see here at the deadline. if the 76ers miss out on Vanderbilt. The Dallas Mavericks are also looking to move out the contract of Tim Hardaway Jr. We've covered that extensively here at the Upside. You can check out all of the videos we've covered about that. The Cleveland Cavaliers have been one team that's been connected with him. The LA Lakers as well. We posted a video today about the LA Lakers in talks with the Utah Jazz for Mike Conley and Malik Beasley possibly going to LA in exchange for Russell Westbrook and 2 first-round picks. Now, whether or not those picks would be protected or not remains to be seen, but that seems to be the trade route that the LA Lakers are going for here at the deadline, cashing in all their chips. Now, is this going to be the right move? I think Mike Conley is a lot older in the tooth than a lot of people are acknowledging right now. Another player that's another, long in the tooth type player, Kyle Lowry, another guy that you might not want to trade for just because of how long in the tooth they are. Now, the veteran status, the veteran, intelligence that they bring to your team will be invaluable. Don't get me wrong. But when you look at the other players that could be had out there, like a D'Angelo Russell, much younger player, could really, give you some high upside play. I think that would be the better option if I'm looking for, a point guard to come in and, solidify my rotation at the point guard spot. Looking at you, LA Clippers, after you failed to bring in Kyrie Irving, we saw how moved you were to make a legitimate offer for him, and the Clippers did put out a good offer. If they give that similar type of offer to a team like the Minnesota Timberwolves, I think there's a very good chance they get a deal done and get D'Angelo Russell here at the deadline. Maybe a deal can be worked around Terrence Mann, John Wall, Kennard, and a pick or 2. That would be a great haul for the Minnesota Timberwolves, a team that's lost a lot of talent over the past year because of the Rudy Gobert trade. They need some depth, especially some scoring. Bringing in one of the top three-point shooters in Kennard would be a nice piece for them, and then a great defensive player in Terrence Mann. Mann has a strong market out there. Several teams have asked about him, but the Clippers are looking for a point guard. They're not exactly happy with the way John Wall has meshed with the team so far. He's trying to adjust to a different way of playing than he ever has in his entire career, and whereas I think the Minnesota Timberwolves could use him just like he has been all of his entire career, the LA Clippers are asking to do something vastly different, and so maybe it'd work out best for both teams to get that side of the trade for them. For instance, John Wall getting to Minnesota, and for the Clippers to get a guy like D'Angelo Russell. But let us know in the comment section what you guys think about the trade deadline, where you think these big guards are going to go. Kyle Lowry has been put on the market once again by the Miami Heat. He was put on there earlier, back in the beginning of December, pulled back because of the run Miami had. Now they put him back out there on the market. They originally were hoping to get a guy like D'Angelo Russell back. Obviously, the Timberwolves had no interest in a trade like that, and they said as much publicly. So Kyle Lowry will not be going to Minnesota. There are plenty of teams out there that do need point guard help. I think that the Mike Conley news that he might end up going to the LA Lakers probably solves their spot at the point guard position. I think the Clippers could be the best fit for a guy like D'Angelo Russell here at the deadline. So Kyle Lowry may end up staying in Miami. But if you're not willing to pay the price for D'Angelo Russell, if you're the Clippers, maybe you make the move for Kyle Lowry instead. But there's a lot of teams out there that are looking for guard help right now, and there's a lot of guards out there for you, not even counting Fred VanVleet. The Brooklyn Nets were hoping to bring him in and expand the Kyrie Irving trade to a 3-team trade so that they could get Fred VanVleet. That didn't happen. But don't hold it against the Toronto Raptors to make some surprising moves here at the deadline. There's going to be a lot of activity on deadline day. They're holding out until deadline day to decide whether or not to buy or sell here at the deadline. Another team that's hoping to buy at the deadline instead of sell is the Chicago Bulls. We haven't covered them quite as much, but they're expected to have Lonzo Ball at some point return towards the end of the season. They've got a ton of guards right now on their roster. They could trade one of them in Alex Caruso for a couple of first-round picks. That was the asking price at least a month ago. Now it seems that they're at least listening more in earnest to offers for him. Not saying they're going to trade him, not saying that they're on the verge of moving him or wanting to move him or anything like that. He just could be their most valuable piece that they could move here at the deadline if they decide to sell without mortgaging their entire future or dismantling their team entirely. They still have Levine, they still have DeRozan, they still have Vucevic, at least for now, and they still have Patrick Williams. We'll see which route they end up deciding to go here at the deadline, but they're another team to keep your eyes on here as we approach February 9th. Again, just so you guys are aware, for those of you who just joined us, we'll be live for you guys tomorrow at 7 p.m. We'll go through about midnight. That's going to be a 5-hour live. We will cover the Dallas Mavericks debut with Kyrie Irving against the LA Clippers. So make sure you join us for that. We'll also break down any trades that happen in that or tomorrow evening, any trade rumors that happen as well. And then, of course, on deadline day, we'll be live from 8 a.m. to probably about 5 p.m. Go through the deadline, break down every single trade as it happens, who wins, loses the trades, trade grades, what it means for the future of both teams. Does this mean they're a contender? Does this mean they're going to get the number one pick? What does this trade do as far as impacting the roster for years to come? We'll analyze every single bit of it. And of course, the draft pick compensation that's bound to be included in almost every single one of these trades. What does this end up doing to their stockpile of draft picks for years and years to come? Looking at the Oklahoma City Thunder, the New Orleans Pelicans, teams that have stockpiled a ton of picks over the past 5 years, they could start dealing some of these first round picks over the next couple of years. The Pelicans, I'm looking at them because they have a very interesting position. They're looking to try to push for the postseason right now. Zion Williamson's missed more time again this year, but they're interested in bringing in OG Anunoby here at the deadline. I think he'd be a great fit for them, but the question is this the time for them to go ahead and push their chips to the center on another season where they don't have Zion Williamson completely healthy? We'll see what they ultimately end up deciding to do. Another trade we had was with the Miami Heat and San Antonio Spurs, sending Dwayne Dedmon and a second-round pick to the San Antonio Spurs. Basically gets Dedmon back to San Antonio, saves them some money. Dedmon was a little bit of a headache anyway for the Miami Heat this year. Miami really hasn't gotten anything from their big man this year outside of Bam Adebayo. They're a team that has a lot of question marks right now as far as their roster as a whole and what it'll ultimately end up looking like over the next few years. They're a team that has a lot of contracts already doled out, but they have a lot of contracts that can be easily moved as well. And so they're a team that's kind of in flux, whether or not they're going to keep their core together or are they going to try to bust it up and try to revamp their team. They have Jimmy Butler there. They have Bam Adebayo and Kyle Lowry. That's supposedly their big three. But we'll see what they end up deciding to do. Of course, Duncan Robinson's contract is not exactly tradable right now. But one other note as far as untradeable contracts, John Collins, one of the worst contracts right now in all of professional basketball. I'm still surprised that the asking price right now for him remains a role player. I'm kind of surprised that the Atlanta Hawks aren't exactly facing reality, that John Collins, who's shooting, 25% from three, absolutely been abysmal on the floor, just been a headache all over the place for them, really is giving them nothing right now. Other than just a complete distraction for that roster. They need to move him. And I think they need to face reality that they're going to have to attach some type of an asset at this point to be able to get him off of their roster. Now, wherever he ends up going, maybe he rebounds to become the player that earned that $25 million salary per season. But as of right now, he is not worth 10. And paying him $25 million per season for the next 3 years after this year and asking a team to bite down on that and give up a role player in return is certainly asking a lot. Honestly, I think it's asking for the moon. I think the Atlanta Hawks would be wise to go ahead and try to shed that salary however they can, try to go into free agency, maybe trade Bogdan Bogdanovic as well here at the deadline. I know the Mavericks have had interest in him in the past. Not sure he's a great fit right now with the Mavericks after making the trade with Kyrie Irving. But any way you can shed those big long-term salaries would be a great thing for the Atlanta Hawks. They have a couple of good building blocks right now in DeJounte Murray, in Trae Young. But they need to figure out what they're going to do with those other big long-term salaries that honestly are kind of an albatross for them. I think they're going to have to attach picks and or good young players. I was just playing around with on Fanspo where if you guys can kind of trade around salaries just to see what it ultimately take. And I was trying to see all the different, Atlanta Hawks fans, what their thoughts were. And I was just kind of surprised at their thought process around John Collins. I mean, if you want your team to get better, sure, you'd love to have John Collins be the old John Collins, but he hasn't been that. He doesn't look like he's ever going to be that player again for them. And I think that in order for their team to move forward, they need to move off of that contract. Now, if that means attaching a pick to it, if that means attaching a player as promising as A.J. Griffin is to him to be able to get that contract off of that team, I think that would work wonders for their future going forward. Whether they're able to reinvest the money that they were giving to John Collins into their team or whatever they decide to do with the rest of their cap space after they move him remains to be seen. But getting him off of their roster first and foremost is an absolute priority in my mind for the Atlanta Hawks. So do not be surprised if the Atlanta Hawks face reality after the trade deadline and say, hey, we're not going to be able to move John Collins for anything. So after the deadline, they go into the offseason with the headache's still there, more off the court concerns about him not meshing with Trae Young and constant headache, etc., then I think the Atlanta Hawks might finally face reality and say, hey, I guess we're going to have to attach an asset. But I don't think that's going to happen here at the deadline. That's a huge salary to try to move here at the deadline, and he's not exactly bringing a lot of talent to the table right now. That's a big risk for any team to take him on. So even with the assets that would be attached to him, but we'll see what ends up happening with the Atlanta Hawks here at the deadline. But as I mentioned, we had 2 trades today. Kessler Edwards goes from Brooklyn to the Sacramento Kings, and Dedmon goes from the Miami Heat to the San Antonio Spurs. What do you guys think is going to happen next? I know we saw some rumors around Cam Reddish, who had long been connected with the Dallas Mavericks about the possibility of sending back Reggie Bullock. Well, now we have a couple other teams that are interested in Cam Reddish. Add to the list the list anyway for Cam Reddish includes the Phoenix Suns, the LA Lakers. Now includes the Denver Nuggets. It also includes the Detroit Pistons. It includes the Portland Trail Blazers. It includes the Milwaukee Bucks. It includes the Miami Heat. Basically, the entire league is looking for wing help. They see Cam Reddish literally sitting on the bench every night for the Knicks and say, hey, maybe I can get something out of him, at least on the offensive end of the floor. And players like that are always in demand here at the trade deadline. How much draft picks, what kind of draft capital could it take to get him? I'm expecting probably 2 second-round picks. I don't think he's worth necessarily 3 second-rounders that Hachimura went to the Lakers for, because Hachimura was part of the rotation. Even though he was injured for a good portion of the season, he was back. He was performing, having 30-point games. He was an impact player on both ends of the floor, and can't say the same for Cam Reddish right now. I think optimistically, Knicks fans could probably expect 2 second-round picks back at best. Their best bet might be to get a rotation player back like a Reggie Bullock, maybe a Bones Highland from the Nuggets. We'll see what they end up deciding to do, but there's a lot of competition for him. His price, though, is still only going to be probably 2 second-round picks. That's why there's so many teams in on his market, because it's not going to cost a whole lot to be able to get him. Other news, anyway, from the Denver Nuggets is they're continuing to try to dangle Bones Highland as their trade bait to try to acquire either a backup point guard or a defensive big man to back up Nikola Jokic there in Denver. They're the class of the West so far this year, but the West is very winnable this year. Nobody is really strong out West. I mean, you can talk about the Warriors. They're going to be without Steph Curry for the better part of a month. You can talk about the Nuggets, but again, they're the Nuggets. They're a team that's working back a couple of players from long-term injuries. Then, of course, they've had their difficulties getting through certain playoff series. They have the MVP of the league right now, in my opinion, in Nikola Jokic. I think it's between Luka, Jokic, and Embiid for MVP this year. I think that's the way it's going to go all the way until the end of the season. That's going to be your 1, 2, 3 at the end of the season for MVP. But the Denver Nuggets need to figure out what direction they want to go with Bones Highland. Do they want to try to bring in a point guard to kind of back up Jamal Murray, try to bring back Monte Morris possibly from the Washington Wizards, other guards out there. Maybe they bring in somebody off the street like a Rajon Rondo. There's a lot of guards out there on the market right now. Maybe they contact Utah and say, hey, we're interested in Malik Beasley, bring in some scoring punch for them. Jordan Clarkson is another player for the Utah Jazz that could be moved here at the deadline. But they're a team that's going to be very interesting here at the deadline as to what they decide to do. I don't think that the Denver Nuggets are going to spend big here. I do think they're going to try to tinker around the edges. But we'll see what they ultimately decide to do. There was a false story that came out probably about 4 hours ago about Isaiah Thomas coming back to a front office in the NBA. He is currently a TV analyst on NBA TV. Hall of Fame player, et cetera, et cetera. Had his issues with his time in New York, of course. That was well documented. But apparently he's friends with the new governor there in Phoenix, the new governor of the team anyway, of the Phoenix Suns. However, reports originally stated that he was going to have a prominent front office role. That is not the case. He will not be part of the Phoenix Suns front office, so hold your horses on that. So that's kind of one of the other news items tonight from around the NBA. But if you guys have any questions, if you want to send us your trade ideas, feel free to do so. We've gotten a lot of new subscribers this past week or so. We've gained like 50 subscribers in the past week. Really appreciate all the new support that we have. And welcome to the upside. We cover the NBA, MLB, NFL, and the NHL. We'll be covering the Super Bowl build up anyway, and the aftermath of it, the off season of the NFL as well, all of the Aaron Rodgers machinations as well, Derek Carr, if Tom Brady's coming back, all kinds of quarterback news this offseason. One video tomorrow that's coming out is about Sean Payton not going to be working with Team 3. Team 3, by the way, is the team around Russell Wilson that gets him ready for games, his health, nutrition, blah, blah, blah. None of those guys are going to be in the building for the Denver Broncos, according to Sean Payton. And he hadn't spoken with any of the Team 3, people, or had anybody, brief him on what was going on there. He basically just said, "No, we ain't messing with that. We ain't doing any of that nonsense." And that's a big thing when it comes to Russell Wilson. That's been an issue with his time in Seattle. That's been an issue with his first season there in Denver. Sean Payton already putting the foot down before he even gets in the door, really, and saying, "No, we ain't messing with that this year. We're going to get back to doing things the Denver Bronco way. I'm the head coach. We're going to run things like a traditional organization and not have outliers like Team 3 around messing with our quarterback." So we'll see what ultimately happens there in Denver. Of course, MLB Hot Stove is pretty hot this offseason. We got pretty much most of the transactions already done. We're going to probably see a couple more trades as we build up towards the start of the regular season. We'll break down those as they happen, like we did all offseason already. And of course, the NHL trade deadline is coming up next month. They just had the All-Star game. We saw a big trade for Bo Horvat. He just got a big extension as well. Kyle Cousins as well got a big extension, 21-year-old centerman. Got a 7-year, $49 million deal, I believe, today. And so lots of hockey news coming your way after the NBA trade deadline. So if you're a hockey fan, basketball, baseball, football, make sure you drop us a like on this video, subscribe, and follow us on Twitter at UpsideSN. But we'll kind of wrap it up here shortly tonight. That way I kind of save my voice for the next couple of days. But feel free to send us any comments that you have, any questions that you have. If you guys want to check out hoopsrumors.com, that's one place you can kind of read up more extended information anyway from your favorite NBA reporters as to what's happening around the NBA trade deadline. And of course, fanspo.com or or the ESPN NBA trade machine, kind of tinker around with trades. That way you can kind of see what salaries would match. Doesn't give you as far as the value of the trade. For instance, is LeBron James worth a second-round pick? Obviously. Is LeBron James worth a first-round pick? Obviously, but trades are not going to be justified by those type of parameters. It's literally going to be based off of salary justifications. So make sure you post reasonable trades if you want some feedback on them. Make sure you post them in our comment section on one of our videos, and we'll try to respond back to you. We really appreciate all of our new subscribers. Thank you guys for the support that we've gained again, and we'll be live for you guys again tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. And we will have the Dallas Mavericks game versus the LA Clippers, Kyrie Irving's debut with the Dallas Mavericks. But thank you guys for joining us here tonight. We'll see you guys tomorrow.